First of all, thank you for all the help that you have given to this monastery and to this community and to this teacher. And if you can, we have a lot of projects going on. The Garuda House, meant to support and help young people who are in need of support. We already have the building. And then also the Buddha Hall, which is converting this building next door. We will be asking more directly as we go along for help, since a monastery does not really generate any funds. The title of this morning's Dharma talk is similar to what I've been talking about a lot lately, is observe your production. So observe, we know what that is, observe what arises in the mind stream. And the idea here is to encourage you to observe what you produce on the cushion and all the time. We're always producing something. Quite often that production may look to our initial observation or thought process. It may look like just something that's okay to do. And of course, is it? Sure, it is. But look at the way the thought production is covering up what it is you need to see. So first of all, you need to see the first lamination, the second lamination, then the third lamination of thoughts that conceal the truth. And what is the truth? You need to find out. There are words, there are concepts, there are ideas that describe this all over the place. This has been going on for 2,500 years, if not more. So the idea is to observe. In other words, receive whatever is happening without your comment on it. If you can emphasize, prioritize just the observation of the thought rather than add on to the thought with more thoughts about the thought. Thinking about tends to create an incredible matrix that prevents us from seeing our true nature. It prevents us from seeing, shall I use a highly descriptive word that we have no idea what it means, reality. What is reality? Find out. It can't be described to you. It can't be given to you. You can't be shoved into it. But you can avoid it, and you can avoid it lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Is this true? Doesn't need to be true. Is there a sound? Yeah, relatively true. We can do that all day long. You can spend your whole life going to relative truth. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, they shouldn't have, I shouldn't have, he shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have said that, I need to get control of myself, he needs to get control of himself. On and on and on. It's a constant production of other. They should, they shouldn't, I should, they shouldn't. Is it incorrect? No, relatively it is totally correct and perfect. You could take it to a court of law, get an attorney who you could sue reality. It is about seeing this directly. You see it directly yourself. It is about awakening to your true nature and to your Buddha nature. Not easy. As you have noticed, most people are not here. They're out doing other things, which is not wrong. It's totally correct. People should live their lives however they want to. But if you come before this old man and you give me permission, then I'm going to give you some instructions about this with your permission. If I don't have your permission, I probably would just listen to you if you have anything to say. So observe your production. Observe the way you are producing thoughts, ideas, opinions, conclusions, explanations, analysis, logic, on and on and on. All of these are just one drapery after another that covers up the fundamental truth of your true nature, that you are not this consciousness that is submerged into this body. It is not, the fundamental consciousness is not separate from anything anywhere. There is no identity anywhere. That is unreal. If you see it, then this identity, when this body does go back into the elements, any one of the four, that the consciousness does not necessarily believe that that is happening or go with that or think that somehow you are actually disappearing. Question? Any questions so far? I can keep going all day. Go ahead.
As you were explaining that, going back into the ground, the body and the consciousness, not believing that necessarily, I'm wondering how that relates to just like a thought form that shows up as a thought form comes and disappears in consciousness.
What does he want to know about it?
How is that like death?
Anything that shows up is going away. So you could say it's that everything is dying all the time. The thought comes up and then it goes away. And then so we could say that's a kind of death. The body shows up and is here for 60 or 70 years or whatever it may be, and then it comes apart and goes away. But you don't go anywhere. Go ahead.
So will thought formations like the opinions, judgments, and ideas live forever?
No,
If they're
that's the thoughts are arising. It's a relative situation. It just doesn't have, it isn't solidly present like this kotsu is present. You can hear it. So where thoughts, they're there, but you can't really, you can think a thought and you can think about thinking, and you can do all kinds of production in that way, but it doesn't have the solidity. It's not arising. It's something you're experiencing, but you're experiencing it in consciousness. So it may not have any substantiality in the room that you're in, other than you turn it into words or comments. You turn it into your vocal cords and you start telling somebody about what you've been thinking. It's still not what you've been thinking. It's language about that. More? So we're not trying to stop thinking. At least I'm not teaching that. Trying to see that there is no real identity behind the thought. The thought is dependently arisen. Pratitya samutpada. Racing to the computer to try to stop the random noises in the background. Did I get close?
I think I have more questions, but I'll wait.
So you're observing what you're producing, and what you're producing to some extent, in some way, is just part of karma. It's just part of causes and conditions. It's just you do this, do that, you see this and see that, listen to this, smell this, taste this, think this, and then production comes out of that is dependently arisen. And then we do something with it. And then we don't like that, or we don't want to think that, or why do I keep thinking that? Or there I go again, worrying about things that have no direct cause or don't seem to be important. Constant comment, constant conversation with ourselves about things. Have you noticed the conversations you have with yourself? What do you do with those?
Any number of things.
Which one?
Good things, bad things, some things.
Tell me about the good things.
Good things.
Why is that funny?
I don't know. I'm just yakking.
Yakin? There's that Czechoslovakia, you know. Anything else?
I'm imagining many deaths, like many deaths, as you talk about karma and thoughts and things showing up.
Yes.
And those many deaths, how do we respect that process so that things can continue to die?
A good way to say it, just observe it. And observing it can be observing how you can't quite observe it. That's also awareness. That's also observing what is occurring. Don't meddle with it. The temptation of the self-centered mind, the ego mind, the narcissistic mind is to try to manipulate, control, shut things down, ramp things up, to get in there and do something about it. And what's being recommended here, you could even say taught here, is don't do anything with it. Don't turn away from it. Ignorance. Don't fluff it up. Passion. And don't tamp it down or push it away. aggression. Those are the three that we are observing or watching. There won't be a success story. If there's any kind of credential or any kind of accomplishment, any kind of progress happening, this is relative truth. And it's not wrong. Relatively, it's fine. And you will have, if you practice this path completely and totally and put everything you have into it, then you will have so-called side effects. You probably will be arguing with people less. You'll be listening to people more. And you will be feeling the negativity in your mind stream without blaming someone, without blaming this, without blaming anything. Just be responsible for your feelings and your emotions, not as a person, but as consciousness, because that's what this teaching is, consciousness only, as that banner says in the back, perception only, just the perception, not what's being perceived and not who is perceiving it. Those two, that's the duality that is so powerful in bringing us into a trance of relative truth, that we think we are somebody going somewhere. Not so. But as I've said hundreds of times, don't believe me. Consider it. Watch your own mind stream. Observe the way you're producing anything, your ideas, your feelings, your emotions. There's some kind of production going on there with no producer. And the production quite often is run by fear. You need to cover that up. You just not think about that. And what's being said, as a Trungpa Rinpoche said, we have to, speaking to people who give him permission, students, people who are on the path of the Buddha's Dharma, say we have to march directly into disappointment, which might sound like some kind of nihilism or pessimism, but it's just, you need to turn into the negativity that is showing up in the mind stream rather than cover it with ideas, causes, conditions, and all the other structures we give to it. Not that those situations aren't relatively true. Of course they are. But it's not a spiritual path. It's a mundane path of correcting, examining, slowing down, speeding up, moving this way, paint it red, paint it black, as the Rolling Stones once said. So do something with it. Do something with it. Whereas the awareness practice is just receive it. Just feel deeply, feel all the way to the center of the earth if you need a romantic description. Feel it everywhere, all the time, completely, thoroughly. Receive this world that is showing up in your mind stream as an apparent other. It's not other, it is you. This is what this is not separate from you. Everywhere you look, you see yourself. That may not have appeared yet in your mind stream. But if you continue to look, everything turns into a mirror. Further questions? That boy right there.
Should bowing. Do we observe our production by minimizing our production?
Paraphrase yourself. Probably wonder why I say it that way. It's because I didn't hear what he said. You know, that's what that's like. Yeah. Go ahead.
Nothing else is coming up. Sorry.
Well, then repeat what you said.
Do we observe our production by minimizing our production?
No. Well, kind of. No, we don't. That whole area is a good area to ask about, but that whole area, be on receive as much as possible in that area. You'll notice some production happening in that area by receiving just as much as you can. And then you'll notice that there's areas where you're pushing back, you're trying to fill something in. That's also to be observed. Young man. Further?
Should bowing. What is your teaching of less is better or don't hook up the vocal cords?
It's just a relative. I mean, you can use that. Sometimes that's going to show up for you or nothing else. But just shut up. You've had emotions come out, and you maybe in the past in a relationship or in with a person in the Sangha or a person at Walmart or your family, any other social milieu or structure, you found yourself commenting and saying something back, you might want to just not say anything and just receive whatever shows up, no matter how bad it tastes. I say taste, I mean in terms of how it feels. I'm just using that as one of the sense fields. More.
Not yet, thank you.
Was it divine? Just used the phrase, you just used the phrase trance of relative truth.
Yes.
Is slowing everything down by sitting on the cushion and holding still, is there something about the stillness or slowness that breaks that trance?
I don't know if it breaks it, but it makes that that tendency that we have to grasp onto something and hold it there and maintain that entrainment or that trance. So it makes it over time. It just isn't. It will start to come apart. Any kind of the other word is fixation or trance. We're fixated on it. So if we just look at it, don't do anything with it. Don't justify it, explain it. Don't push it away or accuse that of something or say, well, that can't be happening. And also don't necessarily turn away or distract yourself into, a game of euchre. You could play euchre, just be aware of why you're playing euchre. Why are you playing euchre? Oh, okay.
Music bowing, what is it about the practice that helps us see through that trance?
I think it's the stillness and the steadiness, and consciousness is already liberated, but it's tied into a body-mind complex, a lifetime. Everything about your life, your mom, your dad, your story about your family, your things that happened to you when you were 8 years old that you still remember. We continue to recall and remember and use those memories, and just the feeling of being here, having your hands and your arms and your face and your body temperature, and everything is saying, here, I'm here. This is me. This is Mozuku, or this is Sokuzan. The constant chatter of relative truth to establish ourselves in a personality. This is why the teaching talks about personhood, that we're to be free of personhood. Doesn't mean the consciousness goes away. The consciousness is actually liberated and is no longer contained or fixated on a self that needs protecting, or a self that needs advancing, or the self that needs anything. It doesn't need anything. Who you are does not need anything more.
Music bowing, what am I buying into if off the cushion I think I need stillness?
You need stillness?
Yeah, there's just this sharp contrast between the cushion and off the cushion.
It's okay.
And yeah, off the can the practice make everyday life feel more claustrophobic?
If you spent the first 20, 30 years or whatever it is of avoiding everything, then when you come into this particular way of working with the mind, a lot of that is going to show up. That now you're in a practice where you are asked to just look at the nature of the mind, watch the mind come and go, watch thoughts arise, turn this way and that way, and look for a self, and then they fade away. If they find a self, then that self, that aspect of the consciousness, starts producing ideas about this and about that, and there's this rotation going on in the mind stream, just generally discursive thought coming and going, which some teachings say label the thinking and return to the breath, and I don't do that, and I don't do it because it's wrong. I teach differently because of decades of doing that practice. I'm saying the practice that you need to do is, you call it whatever you want, but I'm calling it Shikantaza. Sit down, hold still, watch everything that's moving in any of them, in any of the sense fields, including the mind. Just observe them. Take no position. And if you do take a position, then watch that.
Do we need to find an aspect of stillness off the cushion to see things clearly off the cushion?
I don't think so. You don't need to find anything. Gonna give up that easily?
What could I ask if there's
You
something
could say,
found?
well, you could say, well, why not?
Why not?
Because there is a something we need to discover and because we're here and we're studying the Buddha's Dharma, the awakened truth, which is a translation of Buddha's Dharma, awake, the truth of being awake to this. We're not talking about the political woke stuff. That's political pastrami. But we are talking about, I'm talking about encouraging you to see directly your mind without accepting it, rejecting it, accepting passion, rejecting aggression, or ignoring it, ignorance. And that is done down as Bodhidharma did centuries and centuries ago. He looked at the wall for 9 years. That doesn't mean he didn't go have lunch. Of course he did. But he spent 9 years, according to the legend or story, just wall gazing. That's where we get Shikantaza from. It's not that the Buddha didn't do that also. More than likely he did. More?
Yuhong bowing.
Young?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you. Of course I can
I
hear
can
you.
speak. Thank you, Yuhong bowing. The production, the tendency to production, sometimes I feel is spontaneous. Sometimes I feel it's self-centered. When the
Yes.
chatter doing less arises, should I do something to minimize the chatter?
No.
Bowing?
No, you're doing this. The way you talk about this, the way your preamble to your actual question just tells me you're doing exactly what you need to do. Don't adjust. Don't do anything with it. The only thing you need to do is get to the cushion, sit down, and even the holding still or stillness and the sitting symmetrical is going to show up a little bit different each time. That's also awareness. There's no way to return to some kind of a perfect state. But we endeavor to hold very still so we can watch the movement in the mind or in any of the sense fields come and go, come and go. By watching that, eventually what is revealed, and this takes time, is that there's no observer. There's no personhood there. It's extremely convincing that there is somebody called me or I. And we can use those pronouns. It's not a problem. It's just that there's no actual, that's just a reference point, but there's no actual identity there. If you think there is, you'll not only suffer yourself, but you'll probably help other people to keep suffering too. So you're doing fine, just like you're doing. The important thing is return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the three jewels, the teacher, the teaching, and the community. Sangha is very important. And that's where we have a pretty strong Sangha. We meet several times a week for study and Dharma talks and so on. So you're doing fine. Just keep going.
Thank you, bowing.
Certainly.
Wonderful. You said consciousness is already liberated.
Yes.
When you're talking about production, is there production that comes out of consciousness for us on the path?
So there's different ways of breaking it up, and the way I would respond to your question, the way I am responding to your question, is there is a production that is not produced by a producer, but it comes out of dependent origination, pratitya samutpada, fancy words for something that is extremely ordinary, is not fancy, but is hard to see because of our tendency to want to find something else. The elseness of what is happening starts to come apart, and we just see this. It's just this. If there's a dog barking over there, it's still just this. It's not that we don't notice the dog barking, hear the dog barking, see the dog barking, And maybe it's our dog. But it doesn't show up as some other event or other situation. It's just part of the whole, to use the word that shows up, the name of the movie, The Matrix. Just a lot of little particles all getting together to create this illusion of otherness. It's an illusion. It is unreal. It's vividly unreal and emptiness. Yet there's still form, to quote Trungpa Rinpoche in his Sadhana of Mahamudra. What was the next line from that?
Whatever you hear is the echo of emptiness, yet real.
Whatever you hear is the echo of emptiness, yet real. What is that? What is he pointing at there? What is that about? Don't answer that. Yes.
Even bowing, I'm wondering, is there something about suffering in particular that makes it the path? Or what is it about suffering that makes it the path?
So consciousness is just consciousness, and it's not a person. And consciousness, because of the relative situation of there being big balls of dirt in the middle of nowhere, some of them on fire, they're called suns, and it creates an incredible array of apparent otherness. And in that dynamic, going back, probably billions, trillions of years, the whole situation, the whole complex of elements comes together in such a way that it starts to produce living beings. And what is there also is the consciousness that is not separate from all of those balls of dirt. It's not the same thing, but it's not other than that either. So it is an illusion of separation. It's an illusion that we're here and that something else is over there. Did I get close?
What is it? How does turning towards facing the suffering allow us a path to liberation?
Because if you don't do that, you continue to go in the circularity that's called samsara. And that circularity shows up everywhere. The atoms, the molecules are all going in circles. The planets, the sun and the moon are going in circles. Your mind is going in circles. Everything that has a presence or a physical situation is circular. But reality, it doesn't have any movement, doesn't do anything at all. That's all relative stuff. So it seems to be necessary for you or me or any of us to sit down and just watch the movement, watch the circularity, because that which is observing the circularity is not circular until it is. And when it is, then you've understood what this is. Then the work is over. The job is complete. Don't look at me that way. No, that's better. Anything else you want to know?
Not right now.
Good. Yes.
When you're bowing, is suffering illusion?
Yes.
When does it become delusion?
Well, it starts out as a delusion.
Suffering starts out as delusion.
Yeah. So I'm kind of dyslexic. So I thought you said illusion, but you said delusion. Were you talking about the delusion or the illusion?
Yes.
Which one do you want to know about?
When you're bowing, when does suffering, the illusion of suffering, become delusion? Bowing.
It becomes, you become delusionary when you think that's something that should not be happening, that you don't deserve this, and you use that to reify the belief in somebody who's been offended or been hurt. Shouldn't be happening. And it is an illusion when you see that nothing, this over here didn't cause this over here. The cause and effect are much more complicated than just this caused that. Much more behind it. What caused this? What caused the table? Who brought the table in here? The dependent origination is incredibly vast. It's just all over. You can't track it down. Not that people don't try to do that, but they're tracking down a relative situation. like a really good attorney can take facts in a particular situation and kind of find out who caused what and who's to blame and who's not. But you can't do that with reality. You can't do it with the spiritual path because it's not a circle.
Are you bowing? Does illusion ever go away? Bowing?
You want it to go away?
Are you bowing? There's just something about that that feels like there's something else to be seen.
Like not illusion?
Yes.
Yes.
And what is that?
Awakening.
Are you bowing?
Everything you see is both real and unreal at the same time. The illusion and the delusion are not separate from each other. The Buddhas and sentient beings are not separate from each other. Also, they're not the same. The whole polarity of everything, the this and that, that drives the whole world crazy and drives the whole world to war. Those are unreal. They have no substance as something. Nothing has any substance as something because it is not separate. It's also not the same. We're using relative words and language to try to describe something that is ineffable. It has no, there's not even any, there is not any qualities to it that you can pin down. You can say, this is it. Oh, now we've got it. More?
You're bowing. So you often talk about the Dzogchen, a great perfection or perfect. Everything is perfect, just as it is.
Yes.
Is there any illusion in perfection?
Yes, it's completely illusion. It's unreal, but it's still perfect. It is a way of teaching so that beings who are suffering will have a deeper understanding of what is so confusing, of trying to get this and stop that and control this, and this won't go away, and this suffering or that frustration, and all of the various things that happen in our mind stream that are so painful and difficult. So the great perfection is basically saying, stop it. Just stop trying to fix anything and see what is right in front of you. Where is it? It was right in front of you. Just that. Perfect. Not this little piece of wood. Not that. Just anything that's in front of you is the great perfection and is Mahamudra, the great symbol. Tibetan words that come from ancient times, where people back then were trying to find a way to what they were seeing, to bring that into concepts and talk about it in such a way that they might be able to possibly help some people to train their minds to see clearly. This is what the Buddha was endeavoring to do, as far as I understand it. More.
Is it necessary to understand emptiness in order to see the great perfection?
No. The way you're asking it, I'm saying to understand it conceptually, the way it is sometimes explained. Simple explanation of things are empty of what you think they are. So we look at everything, and for one thing, we think everything is separate. So it's empty of that. It's not present. So, but it is full of what it is. And what is it? Not separate. Radiance. But it's not a radiance like that comes and goes, like the sun. Goes behind the clouds, goes behind the earth, or the earth goes behind the sun. Which one is it, do you know?
The earth is flat, so I'm not sure.
So it's like one side of a pancake? No.
Turtles all the way down.
Turtles? Yeah, Trungpa Rinpoche once talked about a big blue pancake. He said the sky is like a big blue pancake. Not sure what he was pointing at. Yes.
You home bowing. Sorry.
Go ahead, Susan. Susan?
I think it was Yuhong.
Hmm?
Yuhong.
Was it Young? Whoever was bowing,
You home bowing.
yeah, go ahead, Young.
Are all the forms of suffering illusion, Bowing?
Everything that shows up, suffering or not, it's not saying that nerve endings aren't being abraded. I'm not saying that isn't happening, but the fundamental understanding is that it's unreal. All of them. Everything is unreal. But it has a presence that is, it's just like the one I often use, because I think most of us know what it is and will maybe resonate with it, just like a Stephen King, a movie based on a novel by Stephen King, who was incredibly good at building up fantasies and unreality in the form of horror or scary stuff. If you watch that, even though you know it's unreal, it's still scary, or it still will cause you to maybe look away when something horrible is about to happen. So but it's unreal. It's a fabrication.
Stephen Bowing, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
The great perfection is ordinary,
Yes.
and at the same time, is it perfect, Bowing?
Yes, it's not two. So any two-ness is unreal. Chisho, do you have a question, or are you just frustrated by the music you're listening to?
He's bowing. No, I'm just nodding my head, the Indian nod, bowing.
What's he doing?
Indian,
Oh, it's an Indian nod. Okay. I'll have to learn that. Indian nod. Okay, good. Further questions in here? Hondo.
Hondo Bowing, is it possible for us on the path to see something clearly? To see,
What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about the time that 40 plus years ago when you received everything, nothing sleeps,
That
everything's
wasn't,
awake.
okay, what's the question about?
Did you see that in the midst of also seeing other things that you were covering up?
Yes. And that was like, it wasn't particularly mystical. And it was in a retreat hut that I built in 1977. And it was just, I woke up in the morning and it's like I heard a voice in my head, and it might have been my voice, I don't know, it said, nothing sleeps. And that was the end of my thought process for several hours. And then thoughts eventually started showing up again. And I went right back into my own personal form of insanity.
So in that moment, would you say consciousness only? And then after that, you were aware of your consciousness?
You know, I have no idea. I just know that was a powerful thing that happened then. And I didn't, I tried to make something of it, but it wasn't allowing it. It was too direct. So therefore it faded out over time. Yes.
So then when we're seeing like little insights, is that consciousness, the same sort of thing? Like
Could be. The Japanese tradition is called kensho, or insight into your true nature. So you may have some flashes of who you are that may go beyond the duality that ego is normally trying to maintain or get some kind of a struggle with. So you may have some of those, but they don't, for one thing, they don't last, and they're not, the idea isn't to reinforce those or try to return to them. The idea is to continue to watch whatever moves, even if it seems crazy or painful or delusionary or illusionary, no matter what it is, whatever is moving, just observe. Go ahead.
so are those moments where we have received whatever was produced by dependent origination and then just not covered up?
What?
Are those kensho moments, those moments of insight, produced by dependent origination, and we, in that moment, have not covered it up? Is that a question or not?
You know what you asked me?
I think I do.
Well, then I'd say yes to what you asked me.
So with that answer, is it saying I've just produced a whole bunch of stuff?
What?
With when you answered yes to
Yeah.
my convoluted question, was it, you're saying, yes, I produced a bunch of stuff.
No.
What are you saying, bowing?
You tell me, how did you understand it? How did you understand it?
I guess I understood that what I was trying to describe is something that you would not object to.
Okay, well, you succeeded. What? No. Anything else? Sir?
Hello. What's a life?
Is what?
What is a sane life?
Sane? No more war. No fighting with anything. No matter what comes down the pike, no fighting, no war, no war. You can't go to war with your child. You could. There's people that fight with their children, of course, but you don't. It's that close to you. No more war. Don't agree, don't disagree, and don't ignore. And this way you see it, everything becomes mirror-like. I'm not saying it's a functions like a mirror where you see your body in someone else, but you see that you're not separate from others. Is there a question that someone spoke up? Still want to go?
Bowing. You're bowing.
Okay, go ahead.
What causes illusion to arise? Bowing.
So the illusion that we become deluded by, and therefore delusion, is the consciousness that has curled up into a ball of identity or me that is aligned with a body that helps us separate ourselves from everything, is afraid. So it is fear of other, fear of anything, some kind of a fear of open space, fear of claustrophobia, agoraphobia, xenophobia, all the other phobias, just fear anything that is other than us. And so the path to liberation helps us see that we are not separate from anything or anyone anywhere at all. That's completely untrue. You can't, the consciousness, it's paradoxical, because anytime you try to establish it as a logical or reasonable statement about anything, it just comes apart, because nothing is fundamentally separate from anything else. Did I get close to your
I have a follow-up. Does consciousness arise, or is it always the case? Bowing.
consciousness is always there, but it aligns with the sense fields. So, but consciousness is always the case, even when you're sound asleep. But I say, as I've often said, don't believe anything I've said. Look at it yourself. Find out yourself so that you understand it yourself.
Thank you.
Welcome. Further questions?
Mahesh Bowing.
Senchu bowing.
Go ahead, Senchu.
Senchu bowing. When you point directly at reality, when you point us, or point, what's my question? When you point directly at reality, is that pointing subtle? And really what I'm wondering is, how do we miss direct pointing? Bowing.
Because you think you don't see it, or you think you see it, you take some kind of position on it. There's no way to point at reality. There's no pointer. There is no solid separate identity anywhere. It's an incredible illusion. Look how much this looks like something. It's amazing. Is this something? Is there something? Is there someone here? Yes, there's a body here and there are bodies here. Breathing, eating food, sleeping, waking up, rotation, rotation, rotation.
Mahesh bowing.
Mahesh, go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand the method of sitting. So right now, when I sit, especially have a question on like what is this observing that you talk about? Because when I sit, what I notice is I'm sitting facing the wall, and I'm not specifically focusing on any of the sense fields. Again, I'm not lost. And then I'm sitting like that, and slowly what happens is a thought arises, and I grab onto the thought, and I'm now thinking. I'm lost in the thought process. I'm not aware of anything, and then suddenly I realize that I'm caught up in thought. I'm back. So I don't need to do anything here. I just need to continue to sit again, and again I get grabbed. Again I get lost in another thought, and I come back. So is there anything to do here? Is there anything to observe or anything? It's just like I don't need to do anything. I just need to sit there, and whenever I realize I'm back from the thought chain, I just continue to sit. So is there anything additional that you're recommending, especially when you say observe? Bowing.
No, thank you for the question, Mahesh. It looks like you're doing exactly what I'm calling is shikantaza. And that is a process whereby you just observe what arises and then you notice your awareness. You tell me you go away, and then you come back, and then you go away and you come back. That's the process of sitting meditation as I teach it. So just watch what comes and goes and comes and goes. Eventually, by not grasping at what comes, and by not tagging along after what goes, by doing nothing with it other than just receive the appearance, receive the disillusion, eventually you see that what is coming and going is unreal. It has a reality that is very relative. It's for a moment you weren't thinking anything, and now you're thinking about getting your laundry done or something like that. So you notice that coming and going. Don't do anything with it. Don't particularly add or try to receive a credential or anything at all. So the way you ask the question, I would say, yes, just keep going. No, there's nothing else to do. There is no accomplishment here. If there's an accomplishment, we just left the spiritual path. The mundane path is full of right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, success and failure. And you may have to spend some time rotating around in that circular fashion. But if you have a teacher and you have a teaching, which we do, and you have a community, which we do, then these three will support you. Just this situation where I'm endeavoring to teach the truth, and we have a community who we're all we're doing this together. And then, so I don't know what else to say other than we just keep going. It's very difficult. Samsara is, as the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, life is suffering. And it's not nihilism or negativity, or it's just true. Our nerve endings, both on our fingertips, and in my case, my right hand is sore. I'm having difficulty doing almost anything with that. I still managed to pick up a cup of coffee, which is probably because of the coffee. But pain, the pain of alternation. Things are okay right now, but what if everything goes to hell all of a sudden? So then we start to suffer before anything is even gone.
Mahesh bowing. I have another question, especially with relation to what is the role of a teacher. What does a teacher actually like? You mentioned once in one of your talks that the student needs to give the permission. So what is the teacher then doing? Is it like they adjust? Do they work with the students' consciousness in some way, with their mind stream in some way that helps them progress? Or and also, I think in another context, I remember you mentioned, I think in one of the recent talks, that the teacher needs to be willing to experience all the suffering that the student is going through, however neurotic they may be, and they just do that because they don't have a self. The teacher doesn't have a self, so they just jump into it. I don't know. So
I'm
what
following
exactly?
you, but I'm not sure what you want to know. Make it very simple. I'm a very simple guy.
Yeah. So my question is, how does working with the teacher help the student progress? Is there something the teacher is doing, like passing on some energy, or is something happening there?
No, it's not separate. There's nothing to be passed on. At the same time, there can be the illusion that that's happening. So it's a very powerful dynamic between the teacher and the student. And I think it's so completely different between each student-teacher combination, the energy that's happening there, or however you want to characterize it. Very, very different. If the teacher is a true teacher, and my definition for a true teacher is a person whose consciousness, who teaches out of what they're looking at, not what they believe or what they know. They're not teaching out of knowledge. I mean, not relative knowledge, even though there's lots of relative knowledge in the provisional teachings, tons of it. The Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 Links, and so on and so forth, the realms. But one who actually sees what this is can actually speak out of that seeing, and especially by being asked a question. You're asking me a question. That's why I sometimes say, what is it you want to know? So I can give you a response out of what I'm seeing, because I'm looking at something that you are looking at also. You just don't see what it is. You see what you think it is, because you're protecting yourself as a self-centered entity. You think there's something threatened, not just you, but we all do. We think something is threatened, and we have to make sure we don't look bad. We don't make a silly question or do anything. So I'm saying, if you can tell me directly what you want to know about the teacher, I will endeavor to respond in as clear a way as I can.
Mahesh bowing. So I think my question is more in general of how does like, why do we even need to work with the teacher? How, like, because in coming, like, in general in Indian traditions, they talk about Shaktipat or energy transfer, something the teacher does that awakens the student awaken. Is there something of that sort happening in Zen, or?
So sometimes I would say, I mean, it shows up in different traditions. Shaktipat is something, I mean, I could do that. I can go and zap everybody on top of the head. And occasionally I might show up a little bit that way, but it's not because I feel like I have some kind of magical energy or what is it, adhisthana that comes down, that I bring some kind of powerful teaching down. No, it's already here. It's here all the time. It's here all the time. So just my words might be all the Shaktipat you need. It's a different tradition than out of ancient times. And in ancient times, it seemed to be necessary to have that kind of a dynamic happening. I don't know. Maybe it still is. Maybe I'm missing the point. But I teach out of what I see. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing everyone in this room, and I'm nobody. So I just get out of the way, and the teaching shows up. You actually get what you need from this teacher. Is that a advertisement or something? No, I don't promise anything. So I appreciate your questions. Very good. Do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Yeah. Whatever shows up is it, Mahesh. There isn't anything else, including Shaktipat. Further questions? Sir.
Why do production and reception look like two different things if they're fundamentally not separate?
Just illusion and delusion, and the tendency to want to grasp at this and reject that. Protect an imaginary self that is really not threatened. There's nothing threatened anywhere. Thank you. More? Further questions, or should we run off the end of Doc.
Naveed bowing.
Naveed, go ahead.
Are dreams produced out of the original?
Can't hear you very well. Can you get closer to your mic?
Are dreams produced out of the original dependent?
So yes, dreams that show up are dependently risen, and they are tied in with that aspect of the consciousness that is still grasping at itself. Even though your body is asleep, the structures in the consciousness that have been that are showing up from everything, from your childhood, from things that have happened to you that you shut down on, from things that have happened to you that you grasped. All of those are dependently risen and are showing up in your mind stream in the dream state. So there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to correct, but there's quite a bit to see there. So spend as much time as you can observing.
Bowing.
Jen bowing.
Go ahead, Jen.
Did you say earlier that if and when we see through what this is, our actions will come directly out of dependent origination at that point?
Yes.
Okay, but as I understand it, my current actions also arise out of dependent origination?
Yes, but it looks like it's happening to a person. We personified it. There's a personhood in there. That's also dependently risen, but it just looks like a being like me, and we use the relationship to the body to reify and reestablish that belief in somebody who can win or lose, someone who's going somewhere, someone who is dying, someone who is just born. So all of the polarities that we show, that show up in our life. And when I say everything comes out of dependent origination, you just stop fighting with everything, and you actually don't miss your life anymore. You actually live the life, and it might not be particularly comfortable. The life that's showing up in your mind right now needs to occur. What happens in your body-mind complex needs to occur, not because it has a need, but because it's dependently risen. There's no personhood there. The illusion of personhood is astonishingly magnetic and seductive into thinking that we're somebody and we need to stop that. We're somebody and we need to get more of that. And we need to not die. It's not that you shouldn't take medications or see the doctor. Of course you should. It's a very ordinary situation you're doing that. There's no demand. The fist pounding, I've got to have this. This can't happen. That's the demand is the one that reinforces the self-centeredness and causes, I can say it this way, and it might not be this way, but the way it looks, and causes us to go into another, if we pass away in the midst of that confusion, we will look for another lifetime where we can get what we want. Don't believe any of this. You see it. See it for yourself. The Shaktipat or the Adhisthana or the anointing or the, what is that other word where what are we doing during, like when we do Jukai? We use some leaves and we dip it in some water that's been purified, and we just go through all of those motions. Is there purification? Everything is already pure. It's already, everything is totally, completely sacred and pure. So all we're doing is we're acknowledging that we're going with that original purity that is already the case.
Jen bowing.
Yeah. Jen, go ahead.
Is all of my production on top of dependent origination also dependently arisen and perfect?
Yes, it is.
No matter what I do.
Pardon me?
No matter what I do.
No matter what you do. No. Lucky you.
That's how I feel. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're not completely out of time, but I could probably take another question if there, especially from someone who has not asked a question. Other than Kanbai Ho, I'm not taking any questions from him. When he's 5, when you get to be 5, Rumi, then I'll take some questions from you. No? Any more? Going, gone. There we go.